Today we're going to be driving the new 2023 Nissan Z and the 2022 Subaru BRZ. Both cars we have today are 6-speed manuals. The Z has a 3-liter twin turbocharged V6 that makes 400 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. We have a mechanical clutch type limited slip diff in the rear. This is the performance pack. It's got the upgraded brakes, suspension, interior. It's a very, very nice car. It's about $50,000 as tested, maybe a little bit more with a couple options. My Subaru BRZ is a premium, comes in about $28,000, has 228 horsepower, 2.4 liter boxer 4-cylinder. It's naturally aspirated. If the BRZ is too slow for you, you might be interested in a new Nissan Z. About 2,800 pounds for this BRZ. Z is a little bit heavier. I believe curb weight now is around 3,500 pounds. Don't quote me on that. I'll put the number on the screen here. Let's go drive both these cars. We'll do a quick comparison. These are both fantastic offerings for the enthusiast in this current market. The Z comes out later this year. The BRZ is already out. I've done a bunch of videos on this, so we won't spend as much time talking about my BRZ. And we just did a full review, track test, street drive, automatic, manual comparison of the new Z. But let's drive both these back to back. How do these two cars compare now? Both getting more power in their newest iterations. I feel like this Z is a little bit more of a super competitor these days, and the BRZ is just more along the lines of what it should have been all along in terms of power to weight. So anyway, let's get started with this new Z. Let's walk you around real quick, show you some of the interior and exterior, and compare that with the BRZ. Interior-wise, this new Z is actually very similar to the 370. The trunk space looks mostly the same. We have a lot of carryover switchgear from the previous generation 370. Seats look about the same. Seat controls are about the same. We have window switches that carry over, but we get a new infotainment, a new dash design, some really cool interior colors. We get a fully digital gauge cluster here in the center and the classic 3 gauges at the top of the dash: boost, turbo speed, and volts. We have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility, 2 USB ports, heated seats. I mean, I just love the simplicity and the purpose-built nature of the Z, and the BRZ shares that same philosophy, which is why I love both of these sports cars so much. We have quite a substantial power bump in this new Z for the 23 model year. 400 horsepower now out of this 3-liter twin turbo V6. It's a great engine, specifically tuned for the Z. There's no price difference between automatic and manual. Let's take a look real quick around the BRZ. Again, a very simple driver-focused interior, minimal buttons and switchgear. Everything is pretty straightforward. A lot of carryover from the previous generation, just a different dash, infotainment, and center display. A little bit more power, a little bit more finesse, a little bit more refinement in this new BRZ. I always love it when manufacturers evolve cars over a long period of time. It just creates a really, really nice end product for the user, and that's the case with both of these vehicles. The previous generation 370Z was out since 2009. The BRZ came out in 2013, and both of these cars build on those previous platforms. All right, let's take the Z for a drive. We're not going to go super in depth here with a walk around. Let's just get this on the road and enjoy it on some local driving routes. Down and back to put in reverse. Got a pretty clunky looking reverse camera there, but that's okay. So, first impressions getting behind the wheel of this new Nissan Z. Compared to the 370, we have some lighter controls. It's a little bit more refined of a driving experience, a little bit less clunky to drive. The shifter is a bit more precise. The revs drop a little bit better. We have a really nice powertrain in this new Z. I love this 3-liter twin turbo. It sounds great. It sounds authentic. It doesn't sound like the faked piped-in noise that the 370 had toward the end of its life. We get active rev matching, which which is very nice. There's an S mode button right down here. You can turn that on or turn it off at a press of a button. Plenty of torque, even at low revs. Impressive turning radius too. There's Charlie and the automatic that we're testing today. Gearing is a little bit taller with this 6-speed manual, but the power I think warrants it, and it's nice because you don't have to shift as often, and it matches this car's power band really well. Ride quality in this new Z is excellent. We were driving this out in Las Vegas on perfectly smooth roads. I can attest that here in Michigan on our terrible potholed, bumpy streets, it rides great still. This is a fantastic riding and handling car. It's also pretty quiet, except for a little bit of tire noise and sound over expansion joints. There's very little wind noise and road noise in the Z at speed. It's a very quiet and relaxing driving experience on long distances. This would be a fantastic grand tourer. The BRZ, a little bit louder, a little bit less refined, a little bit noisier on the highway. So how do we compare these two cars from the driver's seat? The Z kind of follows the philosophy that it's always had. It's a little bit of a heftier, more powerful, gruffer car. The BRZ is a little bit more delicate and lighter and more precise, and it's the more accurate driver's car, but the Z is finally a really well-sorted chassis. The limit handling on this car is fantastic. You can kind of kick it sideways and have a good amount of control towards the limit, towards 10/10ths in this car, whereas the 370s tended to kind of fall apart a little bit more towards the limit. It was harder to push. This is easier to access that limit and drive it in a spirited and enjoyable manner. There's a little bit of safe understeer with both of these cars from the factory, but you could easily dial that out with some negative camber up front. Or in the Z's case, maybe even a wider front tire. We have 275s in the rear, 255s in the front of the Z. So a staggered setup. It is so much fun to drive. Steering is excellent. We have an electronic rack now with this new Z, whereas before the 370 had a hydraulic power rack. Steering feel is still fantastic. It's a little bit lighter, a little bit more accurate. Oh, it's so much fun. You can see over some of those larger bumps just how soft the suspension is and how forgiving it is. Similar case with the BRZ. We have a softer suspension setup in that car than we did in the previous generation. But it still manages to handle really well, and I appreciate that. Cruising here on the highway, we get adaptive cruise control. Oh, we gotta turn traction control back on. Check that out. Alright, get my buttons straight here. Pretty simple layout. You can change your following distance, no lane centering or anything like that, which is fine. It seems to work pretty well in traffic. Really no complaints there. I think this is a nice system, and carried over from a lot of other Nissan products. Works about the same as it does in the rest of their lineup. We have a Bose sound system in this new Z. Sounds pretty good. While we're just cruising on the highway, let's take a quick listen with our sound system test playlist. Volume and tune scroll knobs, which I appreciate. Bose in this is a pretty decent sound system for a sports car. Usually in cars like this, you don't get very good audio, and this Z does a nice job. I think it fits the price point pretty well, compares favorably to the Supra. Let's talk about this in the Supra too. So Toyota just released the Supra with the 6-speed manual, which is going to be very exciting. It's kind of a BMW based but Toyota tuned transmission. Haven't driven it yet, it's not out yet, but that is, I think, going to be the most direct competitor to the Z, and this slots in a little bit beneath that in terms of price point, which I appreciate. The thing I like about this Z compared to the Supra is it's a much more comfortable car to live with and drive on a daily basis. The Supra is great, but it is a little bit tight. It's a little bit cramped. And this is a little bit more of an open cockpit, a little bit different of a driving experience. You're not as cocooned in, you have better visibility. I feel like you would accommodate slightly taller drivers as well a little bit better. We have a lot of adjustability with our controls. I really like this driving position for myself at 5'10". The BRZ is also pretty accommodating to taller, larger drivers. The power here is just fantastic. There's so much torque. Pretty minimal turbo lag too. Sounds decent also. A little bit of a soft rev limiter there. You can really get into a rhythm with this new Z, which I appreciate. The controls are lighter and a little bit easier to modulate. Example there of traction control kicking in and limiting wheel spin. Seems to do a pretty good job. Nice looking Bronco ahead of us. I think though both of these cars, both the Z and the BRZ, have accessible performance on the street, which I think is very important these days. I drove a Camaro ZL1 the other day, and it was just an incredible, amazing experience. There was so much power, so much performance, so much capability, but I had to be careful. I had to watch my speeds, I had to watch myself, and really keep an eye on what I was doing on the road. And in this, I don't have to think as much about that. I can rev the engine out and take it through second or third gear without going crazy speeds. And that's something that this Z still shares with the BRZ, even though it almost has double the horsepower. I think Nissan has done a pretty nice job updating this car and giving it all of the features that you would want from a modern sports car. You have blind spot monitoring, you have a really nice fully digital gauge cluster, plenty of power, all the tech that you really need, but keeping everything simple at the same time. Nissan is one of the only manufacturers that's doing a really good job combining their tech and their physical controls and their ergonomics in their vehicles. So many companies are going towards touch screens or haptic buttons, and this really just strikes a nice balance between usability and functionality. Pedals are nicely positioned for heel-toe footwork, even though you do get this active rev matching system. I really do like the steering feel in this car. It's a very nice electronic rack. Makes a good noise too. The automatics that we've been driving have a slightly louder exhaust. They have this Nismo exhaust fitted to them, and that is a nice option if you wanted just a little bit louder tone from your Z. Not sure on pricing with that system yet, but I think would be a worthy option for any manual buyer. Big improvements with suspension tuning in this new Z. It's actually quite good to drive at the limit, and it just strikes this really nice balance between ride quality and handling prowess. Yeah, it's good. It's fun. I've really liked driving the Z. The more time I've spent in it, it really starts to grow on you. You kind of have to get used to it. The shift throw is a little bit longer. The engine still feels a little bit lazier than like a naturally aspirated four-cylinder like the BRZ has. It takes some time to come on, but the boost is so strong and so satisfying when it pulls that it's really nice. You kind of get into this rhythm with the driving experience. My inputs are still pretty good in this car. It's a little bit less precise than something like a BRZ or Miata, but I still really enjoy it. For a street car and for a manual driving experience, I think the Z really does deliver. And it's such an improvement over the 370 overall that I really do think this is a worthy upgrade for anyone who's looking at this new Z or considering it. If you can get your hands on one of these, it's a fantastic driver's car. Compared to the BRZ, it kind of depends on what you value and what you appreciate. The BRZ feels so much lighter, so much more nimble. The power level is still really good in that car. It's only 2,800 pounds, has 228 horsepower. Power to weight is similar to what an old WRX STI was. This Z, substantially quicker. It's a much faster car. It's kind of another class of sports car, if I'm being honest. You kind of have to decide what you prioritize, what you're looking for. I think both cars look fantastic. They're both blue today, which is cool. And of course, there are some obvious differences between the two cars. Like in the BRZ, you get a back seat, which can be very useful if you have kids. You can throw a couple of forward-facing child seats in there very easily and have plenty of room for two kids in the back that are smaller or younger in age. I personally am able to throw my rearward-facing child seat in the back of my BRZ and take my son around every now and then if I need to. Granted, no one fits in the passenger seat, but that is what it is. The base model is 10 grand less, but you get substantially fewer features. I think the biggest thing that I'm missing out on is that limited slip differential. You get a lot of great options in this performance package. It's probably what most people are going to be going for. But getting 400 horsepower for under $40,000 or around $40,000 including destination is pretty good value. I realize we all kind of have different priorities with our sports cars. Some people want a track toy. Some people want something to just cruise around in over the weekend. You kind of can't go wrong with either of these options. It's very, very cool, and we live in a very special time that both of these cars exist. Probably both last of their breed, which is a little bit sad to think about. And I think also these are two of the only old school feeling sports cars left on the market. They really do provide a visceral, engaging driving experience that is kind of getting lost these days. And it's almost like you're buying a brand new car with all the modern tech and amenities that you would want, but with the driving experience from 20 years ago, from kind of the heyday of the late 90s or mid 2000s of Japanese sports cars. And there's something I really love about that. It's a simpler vehicle to live with and use and enjoy, and it makes you enjoy the driving experience more. In these cars, I'm paying attention to the road more than I am touchscreens, like I am in the Golf R this week. I get to enjoy the driving experience. I get to roll my own gears. I can turn everything off and have a little bit of a hoon, and I can feel things in this car that I can in many other modern vehicles. The same goes for the BRZ. They're a little bit more of a purist experience behind the wheel, and if you're looking for that, these are really two of the last cars that offer that. There's these, the Camaro, even the Supra is a pretty refined, modernized vehicle. The steering's a little bit numb. It's very sharp, very precise, very capable, but it doesn't offer nearly the engaging driving experience that this does. And even I think the manual car will fall a little bit short in that realm. So anyway, I think that's probably the most attractive thing about the Z and the BRZ. Honestly, I would recommend whatever you can get your hands on at this point, but if you can get a hold of one of these new Zs, it's a fantastic option. I have loved every minute in my BRZ. If you want something that's a little bit quicker, a little bit more powerful, you were hoping for that turbocharged BRZ to come out for the 22 model year, then this Z might be the ticket. All right, guys, well, hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea of what the new Z is like to drive. This just builds beautifully on that previous generation, and I think it's a vast improvement from the 370. Between the engine, the powertrain, the refinements with suspension tuning, shifter feel is marginally improved. I think that's something that Nissan could still improve upon. Maybe they'll offer a short shift kit or something in the aftermarket, but I would like a little bit more precision out of the 6-speed manual. But that said, it is still a nice improvement over the 370. Just a little bit more accurate, a little bit lighter, more precise. Clutch is a little bit better to modulate too. All right, that's it for this one. Let's go and drive the BRZ and compare. All right, now let's drive the Subaru BRZ. This is my personal BRZ. It's a premium, which is the base model. It has 17-inch alloy wheels, cloth seats, a limited slip diff in the back, all the right things, the right formula for a pure, lightweight, fun to drive sports car. I was able to buy this at MSRP. It's about $28,000, $29,000, not including tax. Added a couple things like wheel and tire insurance, which is kind of a necessity here in Michigan, but otherwise a pretty affordable bargain sports car option. We have very simple controls, a nice looking infotainment, or at least a nicer looking infotainment than the previous generation. Let's turn this on so we can see CarPlay or just our map. One of my only complaints about this BRZ is that there really isn't a good place to put your phone in the car. You kind of have this central area, but this button is always getting accidentally hit by your elbow. Otherwise, though, pretty simple ergonomics, very simple interior functionality in this. Window switches, climate controls, CarPlay, decent sound system, a little bit better than the previous generation BRZs. Quick button to turn traction stability control completely off if you want to, which I appreciate. So, compared to the Z, we have shorter clutch throw. I've modified my BRZ just a little bit. I've thrown about 1.5 degrees of negative camber at the front end. That dials out a lot of the understeer in the stock chassis. And I've replaced my clutch helper spring with an M-Tech clutch helper spring. That's just slightly different from stock, a little bit heavier. But otherwise, this is pretty much a stock BRZ. Naturally aspirated, a little bit better throttle response. Shift throw is quite a bit shorter than the Z's. Ride quality is actually pretty similar between the two cars. This is riding on 17-inch wheels instead of 19s. That helps. I'll pause my navigation here. Decent turning radius there as well. This new BRZ finally has a nice linear power band. There's a good deal of torque here now from this 2.4 liter. Nowhere near the power level of the Z. This doesn't pretend to be a fast car, but it's now at least a reasonably quick car. Faster than the Miata, and like I said, about the same power to weight ratio as a WRX or an STI. I've disabled my active sound control, so this is a little bit quieter than a BRZ normally would be. There is a little bit of piped in sound on the new Z, but I actually like the way it sounds. It's pretty authentic sounding, pretty convincing. This is a little bit easier of a car to drive as a manual. It's a little bit smoother, a little bit more tactile. The cabin feels a little bit smaller too. The pedal box is closer together. Nice levels of mechanical grip. This is definitely still a handling car. The BRZ is really well balanced with its handling and power levels, but the BRZ definitely has more handling capability than it does outright power. I'm kind of glad that they never changed this engine to a turbocharged flat 4. The turbocharged flat 4s from Subaru are okay, but I've never liked the tuning from them. They're a little bit clunky to drive. There's a lot of turbo lag. They're not very linear in their power delivery, and they create a lot of heat on track. It's very difficult to keep those cars cool. It would have added a ton of expense and weight to these BRZs, and in this form, naturally aspirated 2.4 liter 4-cylinder, I think this is really a pretty ideal package. I don't really have a lot of complaints about the way this drives and how it handles, and for what you pay for this and what you can get into one of these cars for, it's a really, really nice option in the market. Standard brakes in this BRZ aren't very impressive. It's one of my few complaints, but an easy upgrade. Still very approachable limits on the street. You can really enjoy this without doing ridiculous speeds. Toyota and Subaru added enough power to this new BRZ to make it entertaining. And you still have to watch out, but you can't get in as much trouble in this car as you can with a lot of other modern sports cars these days. Fuel economy is going to be a little bit better in this BRZ than it will be in the Nissan Z. I'm getting high 20s in this on average, about 27, 28 miles to the gallon per tank in mixed driving. The Z is going to be probably closer to low 20s just with all that power and that addictive twin turbo V6. But both do take premium gasoline. I don't think wind noise is terrible in this BRZ. It's definitely a little bit more than what the Z has. Tire noise is about the same. And this is on the 17-inch Michelin Primacies, which are a lot quieter than the 18s on the BRZ Limited. Those Michelin Pilot Sport 4s are pretty loud on the higher trim BRZ and GR86. No rev matching in this BRZ. You got to do it all with your right foot. Pedals are perfectly placed for heel-toe downshifts. And this is a little bit smoother of a transmission to drive to than the previous generation, much like the new Z is. Little refinements and touches have been made to the synchros and gearbox. Yeah, it's a fun car. Anyway, I think that probably covers a lot of the differences between these two cars. A lot of them are obvious, but I wanted to kind of drive both back to back and really kind of give you guys a feel for both vehicles. Two amazing options in the market. I'm just so glad that Nissan has kept the Z going, and they've done a great job evolving the platform and making just little improvements, and one big improvement, which is the engine. And it's turned out to be a fantastic sports car. I think it's a really good option and a fantastic alternative to the Supra if people want just a little bit more of a driver-focused and engaging experience. And this BRZ, again, same philosophy but more power, and really, I think, adds a lot to the previous generation. So let's go drive the automatic Z just a little bit and show you guys what that's like. I wanted to throw that into the video just to give you guys a little bit of a taste. If you're considering an automatic sports car, I think that is a fantastic option. I actually really like the 9-speed auto in that car. The automatic in this BRZ, the gear ratios are a little bit off, takes some power away. It's not as easy of a sell for me to recommend an automatic BRZ as it is an automatic Nissan Z. The 9-speed gear ratios are just perfect. It's a fast car. And in the BRZ, the automatic is a little bit of a disappointment for me personally. I realize some people don't know how to drive manual, don't want a manual in traffic. If that's the case, the automatic Z is a 100% recommend over a BRZ or something like this. So anyway, let's cut to that footage, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Enjoy. Let's just do a quick drive here in the auto. You can hear exhaust is a little bit louder. Sounds nice, a little bit more aggressive. We've got Charlie in the manual in front of us. Nice sharp front end on this new Z. You can really control it with the throttle. Just a great new chassis, and like you can see, the automatic is still a lot of fun when you want it to be, when you throw the paddle shifters on. In normal drive, it's just a regular automatic in a sports car, but still a lot better than the automatic BRZ, I think. Sport mode, you'll get some blipped downshifts from the 9-speed automatic. This press car has 9,200 miles on it already. That's pretty impressive. Still think the automatic is quite a bit quicker than the manual car, just with shift timing and gear ratios. Both are fun options.